Okay, we are live. Welcome, all SIRC shareholders, to our wonderful Q&A session. We have with us today COO Troy Clymer. We have with us Executive Vice President Brad Rinehart. And we have with us Senior Vice President of Commercial Sales Joseph Loud, along with special guest and co-moderator with me for the evening, Two Outed, which all of you in the community know very well. How are you, gentlemen?
Wonderful, Elijah.
Fantastic.
Doing great.
Fired
Doing
up,
great here.
ready to do this thing. Very excited.
I know everyone's been really exciting for this one. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about, and I know you guys have been chomping at the bit to get to it. So we're going to open up with a little bit of a introduction. Troy, if you would please.
Sure. Thank you to the entire MediaTek team for all the wonderful work that you do for our shareholder community. I also want to thank Two Outed, who has really become a friend of mine. I love all of our shareholders, but I'm just so grateful for your time and energy moderating these Q&A sessions and everything that you do in our Discord. I mean, I could go down the list of the wonderful shareholders I interact with in our Discord. So I'm so excited about this Q&A in particular because we've got two of our senior executive leaders here at SIRC that really make it happen where the rubber meets the road for the amazing hockey stick growth that we're having. So I'm so pleased to introduce Brad Rinehart, our Executive Vice President, and Joe Loud, our Senior Vice President of Finance and Commercial Sales. So we've got a lot of content to dig into today. We've left some good room for us to riff about a bit on some of these great questions. So let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Our first question, we're going to have a little bit of a roundtable on the new Inflation Reduction Act and the government incentives that I believe have certainly helped propel this recent movement forward. So question is, does SIRC have a specific step-by-step plan of action for quickly maximizing and stepping into the boom this act is designed to create for the industry?
It's a great question. Yes, we do. SIRC's got a really specific step-by-step plan of action to increase our revenue, reduce expenses, and improve the customer service across each of the divisions of our company. So these plans have been further crystallized just last week during a 3-day set of in-person meetings where we brought in all of our senior executive leadership, our entire C-suite, all of our senior execs down to the vice president level came together. And the timing of these leadership alignment meetings, which we had in Las Vegas, coincided nicely with the latest news out of DC. I know it's got us all excited, the whole sector really. The only thing in life that's a constant is change. This is especially true of late in the alternative energy industry. Our overall vision and aggressive expansion plans are adjusted along the way to adapt to change. So we like it, when the changes are accretive. This new legislation is going to enhance our ability to execute our plans, notably in the areas of energy storage and microgrids. In those areas specifically, we've recently added some great new strategic partnerships. These add exciting development opportunities to our growing pipeline. And we'll get into this a little bit later. Just to note, we're currently working, this is important, I want everybody to hear me on this. We're currently working with a backlog of approximately $3 billion of opportunities in the commercial, microgrid, and complex projects from multiple parties. These parties are very interested in doing business with Solar Integrated Roofing Corporation. And with the recent legislation creating this amazing tailwind, and we feel more than ever well positioned to turn this opportunity into revenue and profit for SIRC. So the future for SIRC and our shareholders literally could not be more bright.
That's incredible. Well, first of all, Troy, $3 billion, the backlog of opportunities seems to have gone up exponentially in the last 3 months since our last call. Would you say that's correct?
Well, it's an interesting question. And so I wouldn't consider this $3 billion backlog. I would consider it lead pipeline, right? So, we'll get into the backlog a little bit later, and I've got some of that information to kind of reference from residential, commercial, microgrids, EV, and roofing. But signed in pre-construction backlog in microgrids, I'd classify more to be about 105 million. What I'm talking about is opportunity on the river that now more than ever we are poised to capture because of this legislation. So, Dave and I had a meeting about this yesterday, and we did the quick math on it. Where this is not all team. I'm very under promise, over deliver guy. Everybody knows this about me, but so for me to say that it's just not $3 billion that we're going to have between now and the end of the year.
No. Yep. Opportunity.
It's a backlog of opportunities of that we've positioned our company to be able to entertain now, and that the recent legislation gives us some additional tailwind to go and get. So it's super exciting.
Awesome.
So let's dig into the next question. Kind of gets at a little bit like, what are the relationships with these government programs and entities that allow us to unlock that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we know that SIRC does have plenty of existing relationships with the government. So is there any of these existing relationships that may be used to quickly utilize the incentives and benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act in the near-term future?
So we've been in this consolidation phase of integrating subsidiaries into a divisional enterprise model for some time now. So due in large part to some strategic acquisitions that we made last year, two brands, namely Plemco and Balance, where there are a lot of opportunities for us to get involved in energy planning and alternative energy infrastructure projects with municipal, government, tribal, and nonprofit organizations. That these organizations will be able to benefit from the direct pay provision of the ITC for entities like theirs, who may have otherwise only been interfacing with us for EV charging or roofing services. Brad, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think Plemco has the primary experience of our subsidiaries in dealing with the government. We've had a GSA contract since 2003. I just recently signed a contract with a consulting group that'll help us expand and improve our positioning with GSA contracts. We currently carry about 1,800 different items on there. They're going to help us expand that further and make sure that the pricing is correct and we update it and keep it current. We are still waiting for the GSA EVSE blanket purchase agreement that was awarded in March. That was awarded to 16 companies. That hasn't even started to produce for us yet. The government is still in the process of defining the cybersecurity requirements for EV chargers. Once they complete that process, the manufacturers have a specified period of time to meet those requirements, and then we'll be able to start to really move. They haven't dropped any bids at all on that contract yet. The second part of that contract is another 5-year contract that includes installation, engineering, and design, in addition to just the materials. That probably will be awarded in September, and we feel that we're very well positioned to get that one as well. We were one of only 3 companies prior to this that had an installation and material contract. So I'm pretty sure that we'll be in good shape on that. We have a relationship with Sourcewell, which not many people are familiar with. It's a government entity that provides kind of a nut and bolt process for identifying how to cost a project, builds it up, and we're approved with a 5-year contract there for regions 8 and 9 in California. And I want to let Joe talk a little bit about this as well, because Joe's experience and our partnership with AED also brings some strength to this part of the market.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. This is Joe. Man, this is a really exciting time to be in the alternative energy space. And you'll notice that with a lot of the conversations that we're going to have and the communications going forward, when we talk about being a complete alternative energy solutions provider, we're not talking about just solar. In the past, solar has certainly gotten all the headlines. But what I'm bringing to the team is some functional experience with a team behind me with roots back into the renewable energy industry that go all the way back to the late 70s. We've got some real true believers here from the East Coast that are excited to bring what we've learned over the years to the rest of the country and really the rest of the world in a technology agnostic approach to creating utilities at the site of consumption. And one of the biggest growth areas that we've seen are with municipal and government entities that are not just interested in savings, but are also interested in things like resiliency. And with this new set of rules as it pertains to the tax incentives, we're finally in a position where we can take a look at making an overall complete end-to-end energy management system that offers energy as a service to become the utility company on site, delivering cleaner, greener, more reliable, and less expensive energy at the site of consumption in a way that's created and engineered to deliver exactly what the client needs, wants. We've been working with school districts in parts of the country, for example, that solar on its own doesn't make a whole lot of sense because their energy rates are really low. But when you start to bring in other technologies like battery storage, which is now going to have the 30% ITC, innovative technologies like cogeneration with linear generators, where you can have flexible fuel sources that we're even going to be able to create in the future, you start to see this energy as a service platform develop. And when you can become the utility company on site, delivering not just when the sun's shining or when the wind's blowing, but all the time, there's benefits that are hard to even put your finger on right now. But I'll tell you what, when you're a military base, or you're a municipality, or you're an entire county, the electricity just going out from time to time doesn't really work that well for you. And they've experienced that, unfortunately, and they're looking forward to us being able to deliver solutions at a high level with a lot of experience that we're able to bring to bear.
An impressive set of opportunities and new technologies. And anything you want to add to it, or?
No. I mean, Joe, the way you just put that, both, I mean, Troy, Brad, but what you were just saying there about being from the end to end, able to provide solution from end to end. I mean, we're going to talk about numbers here in a little bit, so I won't get to it now, but that sounds definitely like a competitive advantage to me over maybe just becoming your average roofer or average, solar installer.
Oh, and we're
Yeah.
going to get into this as we go, so I don't want to steal our thunder because Joe's about to dive into a little bit of this. But the reality is, this is why we acquire and top grade our talent all the time. And I saw some comments in the last Discord. There's a reason why Joe and Brad are on this with me, right? So people are quick to second guess the talent acquisition decisions that we make. We have intention with the hiring that we do at this company.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next question, which is a contrast to the previous one. We talked about, the ways that you might be able to capture the, sort of the government incentives that the industry is experiencing in connection with the Inflation Reduction Act. And the next question, as contrast to that, would be, can you provide some examples of ways that SIRC has in the past or is currently, as part of, let's say, their current revenue streams, taking advantage of these government incentives for solar?
I'm going to take that to start, guys. In the past, many of the buying decisions made by our residential solar customers have really been driven by their ability to realize the cash value of available tax incentives. And it's important to note that the tax incentives aren't just, sort of what's front and center with the federal investment tax credit, 26 or now 30%, 26 was going to be 22, was going to be 10, then 0. Now we know it's going to be 30%, right, for at least the next 10 years. So we can all settle down and settle into that reality. But there's another side to the coin, which is that these systems are viewed as equipment that can be written off like equipment. And so there's the depreciation aspect of the tax incentives that comes along with the tax credits, which really, when you put them together, the cash value of those tax incentives are the equivalent of a lot of times around 50% of the overall cost of the project. So these incentives have been, reduced in the past, and there's been some uncertainty around what was going to happen with them. We thought we were heading for a cliff. We were all actually trying to make plans to safe harbor equipment so that we could, make sure that we were going to be able to get this year's vintage of tax incentive. We really saw we can do the math and figure out what the value drop off is when you start to take away those tax incentives, and now we don't have to do that. So we're excited for our customers, and we're excited for ourselves as a company that's going to become an independent power producer.
Absolutely. Pretty straightforward.
So, Brad, do you want to tell about our third-party owned stuff?
Yeah, I mean, today and moving forward, SIRC is offering and will now be able to significantly expand upon our offering of popular third-party owned strategies for commercial, industrial, and microgrid alternative energy systems that will empower our property owners to realize increased net operating income, drive up the property value without having to come out of pocket for the significant upfront expenses associated with the integration of their infrastructure project. We work closely with our investment partners that desire to benefit from all available tax incentives associated with the ownership of alternative energy systems to cover the upfront costs with a combination of equity and debt, resulting in a cash flow positive long-term infrastructure investment that is also able to yield direct benefits to the host as compared to their current situation. It really puts them in charge of their own destiny over the long term.
Really what this is doing, team, is it's causing us to take a review of every single commercial project that we've undertaken. This enables these projects, some of which may have been stuck in our pipeline, to become even more viable as we re-examine them, right? So, I mean, this is just an exciting way to kick off this Q&A, but, I hope it kind of wet the whistle for the future growth direction of this company that we're part of.
It's absolutely impressive to hear, just how much the, Inflation Reduction Act and the, this opportunities brought about by, the passing of this act has influenced not only the industry, but SIRC in particular, in its position as a national brand. It's, definitely something, shareholders have to be excited about. I'm going to turn to some general operations questions if there are no further objections or things to add on the government side of things.
We can come back at some of that stuff on the back end. Team, we want to get through all the questions. This is a meaty Q&A, so we want to make sure we keep it moving.
We've also got 700 something pages to read to really get into the nitty gritty, but there are some really neat provisions in the bill that we know about that we can talk about later.
Perfect. So we'll get back to that, but for now, let's kick off with a really simple, straightforward question. How many employees does SIRC currently have?
I'll go ahead and take this one. This is Troy. So as of current, we've got approximately 217 W-2 staff, give or take. We've got a couple new people starting this week, and, we're a large enough organization. There's always a little bit of change in personnel, but 217. This does not include our consultants or our 1099 or fractionals. It's been an exciting 2 years of growth since I joined our organization. It's been about 14 months, going on 15, that I've been in the role of our chief operating officer now. And it's amazing the growth that we've seen. So it's we're just getting started, really.
Troy, this is too added. Just on the question about employees, if you had to guess, at what rate are you guys hiring W-2 employees between now and the end of the year?
Pretty aggressively. We've got a lot of, we just recently centralized our human resources function here into our Indianapolis Shared Services office. And we're going to get at this in some of the later questions. I don't want to skip too far ahead, but we've got a wonderful vice president of human resources. Name's Ryan Gergen. I know a lot of people saw when we hired him on LinkedIn and whatnot. We've also got a fantastic human resource manager named Vanessa Kinnett. They join us from Accenture. And so it's really helped us to centralize our talent acquisition efforts. I mean, I literally came out of a meeting. I don't want to get some of the nuggets, but just before this, I had a meeting. We're just centralizing our human capital management infrastructure into a new system. So we're upgrading our system from what our current system. I don't want to manage the actual software providers by name, but we're moving to a more enterprise bespoke solution. Then I stepped into a meeting on updates, finalizing our Form 10. So we'll get into that in just a little bit, which is soon, very soon, right? Like right around the corner. We have so much hiring going on. We're for literally every position in our workforce. We're trying to hire aggressively for more residential solar installation crews. Just the smallest part of our revenue hamster wheel, right? That feeds everything else in California right now. Because our sales teams at Future Home Power are so aggressive, which is awesome. But it's an interesting market right now. You've got labor shortages, material shortages. There's a pending recession, right? So you've got all these things going on. What do they all do? They make it harder for us to fulfill our backlog with our great sales team. So we're doing a lot of hiring there. We're bringing on new talent in our leadership ranks as well, especially our middle management ranks. So we just centralized finance, centralized procurement, our shared services backbone in Indianapolis, and our internal accounting teams are growing. We're literally hiring for every single position in the company. One of the things we needed to do was improve our enterprise human resources function and go through training with our hiring managers to better equip them for this growth that we're going through. So, it's one of those things where if you grow too fast and staff-wise and you don't have your infrastructure ready to support that, then your culture suffers. And so we've got to it's a balancing act to get all that kind of moving in the same direction at the same time. And it's hard, but recent examples, we just rehired somebody who used to work at Balance, who left on wonderful terms. He got married and moved to Arizona, right? We just re-entered our organization in a different division there after a few months working for another company to now come and help us with our, kind of burgeoning roofing to solar program, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and in capturing some exclusive opportunities we have with Remcor, which is 2 PRs ago that we just released. There really is some really quick turn revenue for us. So it's we're an organization that treats our people well, but has a lot of room for improvement, like all growing enterprises do, in our talent acquisition and talent management brand. So trust that we're working hard to continuously improve there.
That's an impressive answer, and absolutely shows just the level of detail and dedication that goes into the acquisition of employees, and keeping an eye on everything as the company grows and moves forward from a smaller brand to a nationally recognized solar conglomerate. Let me go on to the next question, because I know we've got a lot to touch on. Still a lot of major meat and potatoes to come here. Next question. Can you talk through the steps taken so far to consolidate all subsidiaries and what steps remain? Has this process translated into a playbook to expedite the consolidation of future acquisitions?
We certainly got a lot of practice at this over the last 14 months that I've been on deck as our COO, right? The consolidation to divisions from individual subsidiaries is pretty much completed. It's always a fun time for any growing enterprise to go through, and we'll go through it again. So that's why this is a good question. This does not mean that we're not going to use strong brands like Balance or Future Home Power or Plumco as we continue to grow. We will. We own these brands. They're trademarked. We own the trademarks. But these are all, SIRC family brands and are aligned into our divisional enterprise structure. And Brad, talk a little bit about how that's fed into, the experience of, creating a playbook for this.
Well, it's always a challenge hammering a bunch of independent businesses into a divisional structure. But change is constant in growing companies. Learning how to manage that change and still focus on our core pillars, which are revenue growth, cost controls, and constant service improvement. I think that's how we become successful as a high growth business with our aggressive value based operations.
It's creating a playbook for this type of thing is a never-ending story, right? It's always evolving. So we've kind of refined it a lot over the last year, but as you just heard for the last 20 minutes, the identity of our company is completely evolved since last year in May. And so we've almost got to examine this playbook weekly in our senior leadership integrations and operations meeting. So we use the entrepreneurial operating system. It's EOS. It's kind of very popularized kind of buzzword and system here, but we've had to ratchet that up to the enterprise level because it's kind of meant for SMB. So, this playbook for us has become very systemized and it cascades through our organization within our operating system, EOS. And there's a common language down through the organization, different org charts and team that it allows our business to stay aligned. So, I think the best person to kind of address the experience of that is Joe. Joe's been with us, Joe, going on 5 weeks now?
Yeah, it was right around the middle of June that I started, and I was a little concerned about how command and control was going to function with a company growing this fast and with people all over the country, working from different office locations, working in different markets. I know how hard it can be, even just with a small business, to keep track of, where everybody's at, what they're working on. But as the newcomer, I've been really impressed just to see that the platform is there and that it's been created with purpose and there's buy-in at every level. Even though at first it seems a little bit cumbersome as somebody that's coming into it from maybe a notepad background to get onto this enterprise level type of command and control system. But I tell you, it's very scalable. The job that you've done, Troy, and that Dave's done, and Brad, and the other, executive leadership team, it really has created a culture that fosters growth, and ultimately that standard operating procedure and that platform does increase enterprise value for our shareholders and employees. It does leave room for entrepreneurial, type people like myself, but it is structured. And when you have a whole lot of visionaries, it's important to have that kind of structure, right? As we look to become that world-class next multi-billion-dollar organization out there. So I think it's just going to keep improving as we continue to consolidate all of our processes, systems, and teams into that optimized enterprise-wide platform.
Joe, there's something you just said. Sorry, I'm just going to comment real quickly, if I may.
Sure.
Joe, something you just said about fostering growth, increasing value for shareholders. Troy, you have done an incredible job at given SIRC's fast growth. Anytime you have an organization of your size growing that quickly, Joe, like you said, the risk is it being siloed. Facebook early on said move fast and break things. And when you have an organization that's growing so quickly, that can sometimes be the mantra. But it seems pretty clear that you guys, with your executive hiring and the systems, that you guys are truly building a company where strengths are multiplied and weaknesses are divided, so to speak.
Yeah, well put. And unfortunately with us, it's not just software, right? We can actually break real things when we're building electrical infrastructure that's supposed to run, key functions of businesses and important places like people's homes.
Excellent.
All right. And that's a good seg into the next question. You talked a little bit about where you've been in terms of consolidation of the various subsidiaries and, what that looks like and, where that's been going. So Tell us a little bit about where we're going. What's the company's long-term plan to grow and build shareholder value? Where do you see the company in 5 years?
Well, 5 years from now, we will most definitely be a $1 billion plus alternative energy conglomerate living the life of Riley on the beach at Soggy Bottom with all of our awesome shareholders. Chris says that big smelly rocket man in Winslow are buying rounds. In all seriousness, our growth plan is staggering, as already indicated by the hockey stick growth pattern of the past few years.
I mean, I'm seeing. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. I mean, I can't help but chuckle. We want to listen. Our shareholders matter to us. You know, I understand that in the OTC markets, there's a bit of a roller coaster ride, and certainly we've been on one this year. But we see y'all, right? And you know, to add it, I appreciate the nod. It's we got a lot of work to do here, you know, and we're evolving dramatically from. We'll get into the financials in a second, but really, what not too long ago was like a small roofing and solar company in California 5 years ago, right? So it's our growth in every area of our business has been staggering. I mean, I'm watching the watch party in the chat right now. I see people are having, you know, drinking Casamigos tequila, and you guys know me. You can send me some rum, but you know. We have evolved from a solar and roofing company, primarily in California, already to a national alternative energy conglomerate that really is on the verge right now of becoming a distributed generation utility company. Let that resonate. Distributed generation utility company that builds long-term enterprise value for our shareholders. So it's amazing what this team that Dave Massey has assembled and provided leadership vision to grow into what we're becoming. It's a little stressful sometimes, but the fun, my friends, is definitely just getting started.
Yeah, just to add on to what you're saying there, Troy, I want to make sure that everybody understands that, you know, I didn't come here to be an installer. When we talk about structured finance and the ability to create, you know, a fund or a fund of funds, I mean, there is an entire secondary market waiting out there for us to aggregate smaller projects into large portfolios, to then see some major cap compression on our cost of capital, to increase the value of our holdings. I mean, we don't want to start every month and every year at zero. We have a real opportunity to be thought of as, and to really become, and for you guys to get on board with us being an independent power producer. And the way that Troy put it, a distributed generation utility company means that you're a utility company without any borders. Your assets are not centralized, but rather distributed to the sites of consumption. And so if you can just imagine for a moment that for the first time in history, we're sitting here with the ability to create cellular electrical systems at the site of consumption. And when you can deliver that to the marketplace in a way that's more resilient than the existing grid, in a way that's greener, more reliable, it's certainly more predictable from a pricing perspective because you're really just paying off the cost of the infrastructure. You don't have to have the fits and starts with pricing going up and down. You start to see a future in which these projects, you know, a microgrid doesn't have to be a giant microgrid. It can be a mini microgrid. Thinking of us as just an installer, or us thinking of ourselves as an installer, is very short-sighted. I think the wider view, the wider angle view of what we're looking to become is to now step into that place where we can use those skills that we gained developing and installing systems to develop and install systems that we get to own long term, and in some ways give our clients a way to look at energy as a future asset, maybe one that they can even pay off like their house, and eventually own the energy generation asset, but not until after ourselves as a company and our shareholders have made a ton of money, driving down the cost of capital throughout the entire process, and, you know, always innovating on the technology side to repower plants that might be able to generate electricity in the future for even less than we're paying today. So it's the future is very bright, and we're standing right on the precipice of something that I think is going to be bigger than when we went from landlines to cell phones. Picture that with electricity.
Wow.
It's a time of great disruption in the how energy happens in the world. So, let's dig into some of the numbers, right? And we'll move into some meat here. Recently, we published some press releases earlier this year around revenue guidance, and I elaborated on them not too long ago in our Discord chat. It got tweeted everywhere, so I know y'all are listening right now. Those that know me, and I do as best I can without getting overconsumed, try to make relationships with our shareholders as appropriate. But I'm an operator, right? So because of that, I'm an integrator, and by nature conservative with numbers, right? I'm not a visionary. I've got great visionaries around me, so we want to under promise and over deliver. But if you just look at the hockey stick revenue growth over the past years and then our forward looking guidance, for instance, revenues in 2017, 2018, and 2019 were 5 million, 7.1 million, and 9.1 million respectively. 2020, 17.3 million. 2021, 84.2 million. Now let that type of growth sink in for a second. 2022, our estimated potential revenue that we're projecting is between 200 and 225 million. Okay. That's enormous growth. For 2023, my conservative projection as our operator integrator leader is 365 million plus, which I personally think is conservative. In fact, we recently examined our TAM, SAM, SOM. So just so everybody understands what TAM, SAM, SOM means, it's total available market, serviceable available market, the amount of the market SIRC can actually potentially go capture, and the serviceable obtainable market. These are all growth markets with amazing TAM and SAM potential for SIRC. Add to that the strong government tailwinds, and our solutions are cost competitive, and there's a strong demand for them. So let me hand it over to Brad, who helps where the rubber meets the road with this.
Yeah, in all seriousness, the sky really is the limit. I mean, with the proliferation of net metering, with a variety of federal, state, and utility level incentives for clean energy, it created an immense incentive. As we grow, the only real constraints are going to be the speed of government, the speed of public utilities, and the supply chain. Solar systems and other alternative energy systems are amongst the most cost competitive energy services in the market today, particularly for residential and commercial customers. EV is becoming more adopted nationally and has an amazing tailwind with the government support. As energy prices rise, more consumers are being empowered to take control of their electric bills, protect against power outages with clean energy, and really control their own destiny.
Well, I'm reading the chat here, guys, as you guys are obviously dropping bombs here, talking about some of the numbers. And Troy, I really appreciate the under promise, over deliver. I wanted to ask, as we're looking at 200 million to 225 million, guidance for this year and potentially 365 next year. Is that including some of the projects that I know we're going to be talking about here in a few moments?
And I see the chat too, right? So we're going to dig into Mojave Farms in a little bit. It's one of the big reasons why I've got Joe on the call, right? But let me say this: I've got our TAM, SAM, SOM up on one of my 9 screens to my left here, right? And our potential SOM 2023 forward is enormous, right? There's a lot of factors that can impact that. So obviously we want to do the best that we can all the time. Like, we're very competitive. I work for win, not money. WIN. I work for win. I want to win. Okay. Period. Yeah. I just want to win. Right. So when we're winning, everyone's winning. Okay. So, Joe and I and Brad and a room full of our other, executive leaders, including Dave and Wanda and many of our kind of chief of staff type people that work for us, who we have some excellent people behind the scenes that go unmentioned too much, right? But we went through an exercise scrutinizing our commercial project pipeline, not leads, pipeline, not the $3 billion that I talked about, which is our $3 billion to SIRC, not part of the TAM, right? Like, stuff SIRC has an angle on would be the easiest way to say it, right? So, I mean, I hate putting out big numbers because I'm not that guy. But I mean,
That's
the number
okay. You
on
can do it here. This is a safe place.
yeah. Thank you to Added for encouraging me, right? So the number on the flip chart was 640 million.
That's not the 3 billion potential opportunity shareholders. That's an additional 600 million.
That 640 is like commercial pipeline opportunities that we have some level of good confidence that we're ranking on a scale of higher than 5 to 10.
That's
that
incredible.
we feel that we can accomplish as revenue in 2023, maybe leaking over a little bit into 2024, right? Because these things take time. But it's just a little nugget, right? So I don't want to. If I see in this chat that someone said Troy Clymer said they're going to do 640 million of revenue in 2022, I'm gonna be pissed later.
No. You were clear. Warm pipeline that you've got an angle on. I think you were very clear about that.
Warm pipeline that we have an angle on is the bigger number. The number that Troy's sharing in terms of commercial pipeline are projects that are at some level already under development. Okay,
that big, and so when you talk about, man's already got me in here. Keep going.
When you talk about large scale commercial and industrial projects, microgrids, utility scale type things, these take years to develop. So what you're seeing right now is the unleashing of what amounts to an all-star cast that's been brought together from all around the country. There's been a lot of work that's been done underground, so to speak, over the last several years to develop opportunities to the point where they're ready to start, hitting their stride and ready to start getting funded and stuff like that. There's a lot of work that gets done to prepare opportunities for prime time. And, I, for one, am excited about taking what is a small team of very smart people that have been able to leverage good relationships into great project opportunities and bring that book of business over to a company that's growing like this one that ends up being a great sponsor to take those projects through, to get them funded, to get them built. So this isn't just stuff that we just started working on last week. This is stuff we've been working on all through the pandemic, so that we could accelerate through the turn. We didn't just stop working. We weren't able to do a whole lot of installing, but man, we've been sowing.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Well, I know we're gonna. I don't want to.
We still have a lot more to dig into later, so I want to kind of
Elijah keep going.
move things on a little bit, because there's already already some of the numbers that you've put out there, and some of the the statements have people going absolutely crazy, as well they should, with with how well you guys have been able to deliver the potential and grow the company in such a short period of time. And I want to move on to one of the aspects that has been talked about a little bit, but not really expounded upon quite as much. And I've seen a few questions of this regard off and on over the past few weeks. Can you speak about the conversion of customers from standard roofing to solar and how it impacts SIRC as a business?
Yeah. I can. I'll start in a little bit here. This is Troy. So, we'll wind it back from the real exciting, huge commercial stuff to the most important thing of our business. I like to call it the revenue hamster wheel. Me and Rinehart joke a little bit about that. It's what keeps the lights on, right? So, we're leaning on 40 years of industry expertise to engage our prospective customers, along with 30 years or more of roofing business, right? If you really look at what Dave has built and the original roofing and solar companies that came together that became Solar Integrated Roofing Corporation, right? Secure Roofing and Solar, SunPower by Milholland, McKay, Montross. So they have foothold in roofing in San Diego and Orange County, okay? And so we've got that coupled with being a platform company that's leveraging relationships, and then 200 plus sales organizations cross-selling roofing customers. So this acts as a gateway into our broader SIRC ecosystem. The impact of this is literally the foundation of the catapulting business growth that we're talking about here.
And think even bigger than that in terms of not just solar. Think of the battery backup opportunities that we're now putting in, the generators in some markets that make sense. And we're also offering a residential EV charging adder to our customers. Those are all complementary offerings. They're highly synergistic with solar, and they're generating higher attachment rates. Very strong.
Yeah.
Very strong growth.
And Brad, just to expand upon that, this is Joe. Like, if you zoom out, and again, think of the entire energy envelope on a commercial or microgrid level, the combination of solar, battery backup, EV charging, and electrical contracting experience makes commercial scale projects a natural transition with higher average sale prices. And so, when you add that to our capacity through SIRC Central Finance to bring project financing to the table, we're offering an innovative, convenient strategy for both residential and commercial projects to get done. They're capital intensive projects, having the ability to offer clients a streamlined way to make it happen. And for us not to have to go outside of the organization to be vertically integrated for all of these things, it really just allows us to capture additional margin at every step of the customer lifecycle.
Very impressive.
Does that answer that question? Did it feel like that got at what you were asking there?
I think it did. I think it, makes clear that, certainly the opportunities that exist already in standard roofing, people who have the relationships with, SIRC as a non-solar company allows them to, come back and transition and come to SIRC for solar or residential EV charging, or, other opportunities in alternative energy as time goes on. These aren't just roofing clients. These are people with long-term relationships with the company that, want to come back and get more opportunities with SIRC. And that's, repeat business and things of that nature is very big, wouldn't you say?
We'll dig into that. Yeah, I mean, Joe is the king of our internal sayings, and we keep coming up with them. But in all seriousness, those type of things help us to brand these concepts inside the company. And I see all the comments here, and we're going to get into some of the stuff HPT is referencing in a second, but that stuff doesn't just happen magically. Like, we have to get 217 people to do things for it to happen. Okay. And so we gotta give them vision and culture and belief and branding as well. Right. So yeah, to me, every single customer matters like every single shareholder matters, no matter what they're buying from us.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to a little bit more of a simple question. Is the company considering a name change to something other than SolarEv?
Yeah, Tron Juice.
Well, I'm selling my shares.
So, no, in all seriousness, we do own the trademark and domain for solar EV. I don't want to get in trouble with Rinehart, so I got to call it solar EV. Even though I typically say solar Rev, but we love that brand name. No doubt. Yeah, we're going to do a lot with it. Solar Integrated Roofing Corporation is also a strong brand with street cred. As some of our other owned and trademark brands, such as Enerev or EnerEV. I personally love that brand, right? Balance, I've got an affinity for that brand too. Future Home Power, right? Another very well-developed brand that we own. Even the Plemco brand has amazing traction, right? It's what's in the story or how you position the brand, right? So as we evolve and continue to improve at marketing, which we've had a lot to do in the last year, we've kind of taken it in stride as we've gone. You've got a lot of brands to combine, and it's a continuous area for improvement as we meet our story as a national complete alternative energy solution. Again, our brand story as a national complete alternative energy solution. We'll continuously evaluate how to best reach our potential, our consumers, and our clients of all types through the most effective branding, the most compelling story, the most well-positioned marketing. So what we're trying to do is observe the tenet that haste makes waste here, because our company is evolving potentially faster than our brands. And I'll just leave it at that.
And I think that's, the key, and it segs perfectly into, the next question is, you guys aren't that small, like you said earlier, that small Southern California roofing company anymore. The company has grown so much in the past 2 years, and with Dave has talked about uplisting, and with SIRC looking to uplist, its competitors would be major players in the solar and alternative energy industry, like Sunrun, First Solar, Enphase. What advantages do you envision SIRC may have over these larger industry players, and how do you plan to maximize them?
This is a great question. I want to let Brad start in on this one. And I know you guys are showing the corporate presentation a little bit. There's a good slide in here on this to park while we discuss this. It's slide number 7. Brad?
Yeah, well, I don't have the slide up, but I'm going to go a little bit off script here and give you a really good example on what differentiates us. First of all, we're a cradle-to-grave provider. Engineering, design, installation, construction, commissioning, service. And most companies are either manufacturers or installers. Very few companies do all of it. I'm going to pick one particular market and show you where we really differentiate. And it's going to be auto dealers. There are 18,000 auto dealers in the United States. 18% of the total cost of an auto dealership is their electric bill, which kind of blew my mind. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, they have security, they have lighting inside outing all the time, they're open all the time. So what could we provide that other companies can't? We could put solar arrays on the roof. We could put carports up with additional solar. We can provide EV charging installations for the EV fleet. We can provide LED lighting for the inside and outside. In some areas where you have weather issues, we can provide generators and battery backup power. We can provide window film. We're one of the largest suppliers of window film for the U.S. government. You start to look at all the things you could do, and then you look at that one particular market, and then you say, okay, there's 18,000 auto dealers. What if I get 10% of them? What if I get 1% of them? It's a huge opportunity, and there aren't really any companies out there an auto dealership could go to and say, hey, I want a complete energy solution for my business. So I think that's what's going to really set us apart as we move forward and take advantage of all the different companies we brought on board and consolidated. So it's going to be really exciting for us. Joe could probably add to that as well.
Yeah, sorry, I'll let you bounce over to Joe in just a sec. I'm just curious. So let's take that auto dealer example so shareholders can kind of put it in their mind's eye. Let's say you have a single auto dealer that says, we want you to put solar on our roof. We want you to do the carport, the EV charging, and battery backups. What are, I mean, every dealership size is going to be different, but what could a potential revenue look like for SIRC for a single auto dealer that picks
If you're
SIRC as an
gonna do it,
end-to-end
it's gonna be
solution?
anywhere from 400,000 to $1 million per location. And the other thing you gotta remember about auto dealerships, nobody owns just one anymore. I mean, if you own an auto dealership, you own 10 or 20 or 30 of them.
Yeah, great
So
point.
you do the first one and you get a lot of them.
Well, actually, Brad, I have some functional experience with that complete solution. It's actually a multi-million-dollar type project when you get into, especially when you get into carports, backup battery systems or gensets. I mean, you mentioned that 18% of their OpEx is spent on the electric, but that's old news now, right? Like a lot of the car dealers are being mandated by their manufacturers to integrate car chargers on site,
Absolutely.
and some of them get penalized by um, their manufacturers if they don't have all of their fleet charged to a certain level when people get there. And there's this really sneaky thing that if anybody owns a business or has a commercial electric bill, um, that is going to really sneak up on these guys, and that's the demand charges. Demand charges around the country have been increasing like out of control. It's the only part of the electric bill that the utility monopolies are able to increase without legislative oversight or approval. So you can bet that you've seen some major increases there so that all of their shareholders can maintain their double-digit returns without having to reach into their pocket. And the demand charge is sneaky because it says that for any 15-minute period throughout the entire month, they're going to charge you to have the amount of energy on standby or the amount of power on standby that was needed to service the highest spike for a 15-minute period for the whole month. So picture this, you've got a whole bunch of cars coming back from test drives and they need to plug in to what, an existing power grid? What if that happens at 6 p.m. in California where you've got time of use rates? That auto dealer might go out of business if they don't have their own energy generation on site. And what's going to end up happening is these $2 to $3 to $5 million type projects per location are going to start knocking on our door. If we don't get to them first, they're going to realize it the hard way. And then they're going to be looking for a solution. And when people start referring them to a vertically integrated single source solution provider, it'll be us. There's not that many of them out there. So it's a great use case. And I'll tell you, there's going to come a time where the tide's going to shift. Instead of us having to go out and look for business, we're just going to be trying to keep up with the orders that are coming in through the door. What really differentiates the platform we're building, guys, is that we have the ability to develop, build, and finance projects that a lot of others just can't do, right? And there are very few competitors, really, if you look at it. In fact, because of what we're building in terms of this vertical integration, there are going to be a lot of other would-be competitors that really just do one of those functions that come to us with their projects to get them funded. So we're going to be acquiring projects from other developers that would otherwise be competitors, both on the residential side and on the commercial side. So just think residential, right? With 4% market penetration in California and a largely fragmented competitive landscape, SIRC has a really great runway to become a national top recognized player with targeted acquisitions in target markets of undercapitalized regional businesses. Those become feeders for residential jobs that they're doing. They might become more successful with the support of a more organized apparatus, and they'll be offered differentiating opportunities to get right into the business of commercial and other types of projects without them having to become experts overnight at it, where they can just tee it up and send it into our shared services center to be looked at by the experts that we have on staff. And then on the commercial side, there aren't really that many companies yet that are active in the $50,000 to $5 million project range. This is the best kept secret in all of business. The blue ocean that's bigger than any other blue ocean is the small to mid cap commercial and industrial marketplace for alternative energy. When you look at who's paying for the electric bill of the country, the majority of it's being paid by these small to mid-cap commercial and industrial ratepayers all over the country. The problem is they're a harder group of projects and business types to get financing for. The big money likes to be lazy and write just big checks. They want to write $100, $200 million checks at a time. So they really don't want to dig down and do the smaller projects. And then their big banks have gotten behind the residential sector because they look at it as, you know, spreading out their risk with lots of smaller bets. But we start getting into that, you know, $50,000 to $5 million range. That's where all the real business is. And so we've got an incredible opportunity to utilize our strengths to originate through an incredible network of referral sources and partners out there in the industry, develop those projects, get them funded, get them built, get them operational, get them stabilized, aggregate them, and then take $200 or $300 million of them at a time and bring them to the secondary market and watch what happens then.
Awesome.
Another
Thanks
thing,
for that.
just to touch on electric vehicle charging quickly, we really are becoming a recognized expert in that industry. In September and October, I will be speaking at 4 different conferences as part of a panel. The first one is in September, the Fully Charged Show in San Diego, which is the largest EV charging show in the country. It will be followed by September 30th. I'll be speaking in Chicago by a conference put on by the Chicago auto dealers, thus our focus on auto dealer bundles. I will also be up in Montana covering a conference looking at the infrastructure needs and requirements for that Pacific Northwest and area. And then the first week of October, I'll be speaking at a conference in New York City. We just got Charge Ready approved in New York State, so we're starting to look to expand towards the East Coast as well. So we're working on getting out of our Southern California roots, which were one of the most recognized EV charger installations companies for LA County and for the Government Service Administration in California, and really starting to expand out of there and take our expertise to new parts of the country that are just starting to do EV installations.
We really dug in on this question, right? And this is the kind of competition question. So, you know, competitive landscape and what differentiates us is important, you know, because it adds to why SIRC wins. Okay. Not the least of which is how it all started. We also do roofing, and that leads into so many opportunities for solar, for commercial. The longevity of so many of our brands has generated strong name recognition in SoCal. We've got significant install capacity there and opportunities to expand, like Brad just talked about, into additional states and new markets right here in the US, leveraging our growing partnership network and an amazing platform of balanced clients, you know, just to put it, thousands of roofing contractors nationwide. So we dug in pretty good there. So let's move on.
Keep going.
Yeah, that's quite the answer there. A lot to take in, and you know, I see some people, you know, were mentioning something about, you know, the length of the answer, but that one is one we wanted to, you know, really dig into because one of the most prominent questions that you know, institutions want to see and, you know, higher level investors want to consider is the, you know, competition situation, especially as you're moving from, you know, OTC markets up to NASDAQ, up to, you know, a higher level competition. People want to know what makes you different from, you know, the end phase, what makes you different from the Sunrun, what makes you different from these kind of bigger players. And that's probably one of the most important questions that we're going to have on this. So thank you very much for the detailed answer. We do want to be able to move on to the next question now, which is, besides solar panels, there are a lot of methods and technologies out there to generate clean electricity and heat. As a developer and distributor, is SIRC positioned to quickly adapt to the latest technology to stay competitive and grow shareholder value? So we're looking at technologies, you know, other than maybe solar and the ones that people know about so far.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, this is Troy. We we dug into this a little bit at the surface level in a few of the previous answers, but I want to let Joe and Brad riff on this just a little bit more here.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. Look, SIRC's one of the fastest growing companies in the industry, right? With a targeted nationwide platform designed for growth and focused on delivering new revenue centers. Our vertical integration allows us to be incredibly well positioned to capture value across the full customer lifecycle, like we talked about earlier. The evolving technology mix is something that is news, right, to a lot of casual observers, but it's something that we've been working on quite a bit back in the lab, so to speak, for the past 4 or 5 years. There are redux flow battery technologies where we've had strategic partnerships with the manufacturers to work with them on commercialization in real life scenarios to model what their technology is going to look like as they go through their process of becoming a publicly traded company and hitting the market. So we're working with those guys in our R&D efforts with real projects that we're developing years before they become a household name. There's linear generator technology that we've been looking at for literally years now and modeling into some of our projects, just waiting and working with those technology companies to help them on their path to commercialization with projects that we're working on that we think they're going to be a good fit for. We're targeting certain parts of the country that we haven't really been able to be effective in with just solar because energy rates by themselves are really low in those places. But when you look at the levelized cost of energy that the ratepayer is paying, there really aren't that many places now in the country where we can't bring a complete solution that rivals or beats what they're currently paying the legacy utility companies who are signaling almost, it seems like weekly now, that they're planning to continue to increase rates. And so if you look at it and say, okay, we can push the pause button with today's available technology and with the new tax incentives that are out there on the inflation of these utility charges and just stop that bleeding with a smarter system that is custom tailored for the use on site, and then just pay that system off over time and own that infrastructure. It's a much better mousetrap.
It's not fair to have to follow Joe on new technologies, so I'm not even going to try. Let's move to the next question.
All right, sounds good. And it's one that I know that, Troy, you got to help me out here, because if there's one thing that MediaTek is seeing over the last few weeks, it's Form 10, Form 10, Form 10. So once the Form 10 is approved, and we can talk about that a little bit, and the funding is secured, what are the highest priorities in terms of operations and acquisitions?
So I want to dig into this a little bit here, as I know this is probably the most important thing for us to, accomplish this year. And it's been a long time coming, so it's not lost on me either, right? This is an enormous milestone for us, just like year-over-year audited financials were as we were coming into this business here. So I spent an hour meeting with Wanda, who's our CFO, right before this call. And she and I were finalizing the comments to go back to final approval on the Form 10. Okay, so we have just received it back from the auditors and our lawyers. And so we are all day finalizing our comments. The SEC wants to see a few comments on this, but not too much, right? I am a very conservative expectation setter, okay? If Dave were on here, he'd say this week. Wanda told me this week, which means I'm going to say by the end of the month, right? So it is really right around the corner, okay? I'm not our CFO. I'm not a licensed CPA. So I don't know exactly how long it's going to take after Wanda hands it over tomorrow morning with the final comments. But it is happening. Okay. We've been told by Wanda and the auditors to expect the Form 10 this week. So watch it take longer. Okay. I want it to happen yesterday. As soon as the Form 10 is back, it'll be filed and completed as soon as possible. I know it's taken a bit longer than everyone wants, but we are all over it. And Dave, Wanda, and me are confident it will be approved anytime. The mission critical priorities in terms of operations and acquisitions are consolidation, continuing to improve and becoming very cash flow positive, right-sizing the company for our future growth. From a financing standpoint, we have over $100 million of financing teed up as soon as the Form 10 is filed and complete. This does include the long-awaited $42 million from Arbiter. So I know it's Danger Will Robinson uttering that word in here, right? And I know everybody's been speculating about it, but I remain very positive on Arbiter, and that the $42 million is going to, be in our bank account very soon. We work with Ed and Darren on a daily basis. I realize there's been some holdups as they operationalize the bank, but they will be a key financing partner for us now and in the future, right? This funding could be on deck as soon as late August or early September. So I wanted to be concise with that answer, and there it is.
That's pretty concise. Tuada, do you have anything to add on that one, or?
No, I know we want to keep moving here. Troy, just really quickly, the funding you mentioned, hopefully late August, September. So between now and when that funding comes through, is there any sort of cash on hand issues that you guys are experiencing?
No, there isn't, and we're skipping. There's a question about this, a couple questions out. We're also doing everything we can to always increase our organic operational cash flow, right? So we've got four wheels, right? The internal hamster wheel of cash flow for sure is residential roofing and solar for us. But right now, we just structured some wonderful new finance solutions to bring to market through one of Balance's longtime partners. We haven't PR'd it yet, so I won't mention them by name, but where we have strong relationships to offer four revolutionary financing solutions for a retail roofing organization to speed up cash flow, which we always want to speed up cash flow. No doubt about that.
No, that answers my question.
Same thing with solar, though. I mean, I want to give some detail here. I know some people don't like to hear the operational details. To me, the devil's in these details. Okay, so my job is our COO. Brad's job is our EVP. Joe's job. Our job is to organically produce revenue and profits for our organization through operational efficiency. Okay. And so having wonderful funding and being well financed certainly enables that, especially with big project financing stuff for commercial. And Joe can dig into that a little bit, right? And we certainly are working on that. We all have a lot of expertise there. I'm outclassed by Brad and Joe when it comes to finance acute acumen, right? I'm more of a generalist. But increasing our installs to 200 plus a month in residential solar also does wonders for cash flow. Some of the things we're working on with our recently PR'd relationship with Remcor, same thing, where we've got the ability now to get financing for residential solar applicants that's not credit score dependent, right? It gives us another opportunity there. So we're absolutely working hard to do everything we can to be operationally efficient with cash flow at all times. So please know that cash is king, and we get it. We've got experienced business operators that work here in senior leadership. I've been an owner operator of a business for a decade or more. Let's dig. This is a good time for us to take I know we're going to move into some LOI and acquisition stuff next, right? But Brad, give us a little bit of your background in business leadership.
My background is primarily in manufacturing. I've got almost 40 years of experience in it, and I've mainly focused on turnarounds in two different tranches. Two very large companies, multi-billion-dollar companies that I spent about 10 years each in, but mostly in mid-market and small companies, independent family-owned businesses, and in turnaround situations. So I really, I've been here since last November, but I really kind of was moved into a different role in April to work with the entire company and not just Plumco. And what I've been working on is making sure that we're fiscally responsible now and have a positive cash flow, as opposed to waiting for the unicorn funding to come in and expanding really too quickly from a cost standpoint in anticipation of that funding. I think that there's two things. By taking a step back and looking a little bit more closely on what our three pillars are, which are our revenue streams, our cost controls, and our service levels, when that funding does hit, I think it'll be much better spent than it would have been in the past. So that's kind of what my focus has been on, and I will be ringing the bell at Soggy Bottom with all of you when that funding hits. But until that time, it's my goal to operate this effectively and with a cost control basis.
Perfect.
Troy, if you guys don't mind, I just want to add to that. I come from the school that says, with closings, all things are possible, and we've always had to bootstrap with the small businesses that I've been part of. Getting operational funding has come from closing deals and making profit in the past. So that's my focus, is to take these good opportunities that we have in the commercial industrial space and take them through completion so that the company makes money. And, if additional funding comes along, then that's a bonus.
Absolutely.
That's great. I mean, obviously.
So it's
we had
definitely
one on-
coming. I want
Go
to
ahead,
dig in. I'm sorry to cut you off, too, Added.
No, go ahead.
I'm involved in all of this stuff as well, right? So I'm at all of our shareholder meetings, right? When we do this stuff, if I'm not on it, I'm involved, right? I'm at the investor conferences. I meet with all these people, right? So Brad very much as well, right? And Joe clearly he's not our SVP of finance and commercial sales for no reason, okay? So that is tremendously important for where we're going, no question. But also important is what Brad just hit on, is being efficient with how we operate our business so we have a good use of cash when we have that funding, right? And that's something that we have worked hard on this year. And so Brad and I have a little internal joke that, any delays in funding are okay because it forces us to become better operators. I kind of refer to, we're like, we got to fly the Millennium Falcon through space no matter what, right? So, if we got to be Han Soloing it for a little bit, it's just going to further refine our business operations. We have a lot of structured capital that is about to enter this organization. And no question, the Form 10 is a gateway milestone to that happening. We all understand that. We understand why it's such a huge thing for shareholder sentiment. So rest assured, we're all over it. And just like we're all over refining our business operations. So when we inject funding, we get the maximum possible internal rate of return.
Yeah, I think that says everything. It's right around the corner, but in the meantime, it's important for shareholders to know that until that time comes, you still have a very strong team here that is fully dedicated and succeeding at refining the business to, create better cash flow and certainly more profit. let's move on to the next question, which is on the LOI front. In the investor call recently with Dave and and Brad, it was said most prior LOI acquisitions have fallen through given the delay in funding and that share buybacks are off the table. With day-to-day operations profitable, in what additional ways do you plan to actually use this position in cash when the funding comes to grow the company and enhance shareholder value? And I know you touched on this quite a bit in the last answer, but maybe there's something you'd like to add.
Sure. On the acquisition front, we are very well poised to be strategic post-funding. Brett, you want to chime in a little bit?
I mean, this week we're going to be closing on an already announced press release of Heartland Solar. The key to Heartland Solar and their successful business relationships and the addition of Bob Zarbo to our team is instrumental and a true expert from an engineering and construction management standpoint. We also have 2 other acquisitions under review that, due to confidentiality and pre-LOI status, we cannot yet announce. I would like to also add that I've been involved in M&A for most of my career and acquired over 40 companies. So I think we'll be bringing a more structured approach to our acquisitions as we move forward. I think we'll look at things a little bit differently and maybe look at some different companies in different markets. Possibly manufacturing down the road, some things like that. So I'm really looking forward to getting the money into the bank that will facilitate making some really neat acquisitions for the company.
I mean, there's significant upside potential with future acquisitions, like Brad said. I mean, Brad hit on something that, we absolutely are examining for the future. The possibility of further controlling our supply chain by acquiring well-positioned manufacturers of importance to SIRC. So, stay tuned as the year unfolds. We've got standardized term sheets now to help ensure future accretive acquisitions are completed quickly and efficiently. We're absolutely going to be much more methodical because we've had so much practice in the last year and a half integrating acquisitions. And now that we've got a platform company, we've got the right people in place so those acquisitions deliver us much better value. And the people who are joining our organization have a better experience. That is tremendously important.
Yeah, it's been really exciting to be part of this organization where you get to come into contact with and start working with people who are experts in their field, respectively. It really is an all-star team that we're bringing together. So there's definitely some organic growth of operations that's important to us that's happening as well. When you bring together business leaders who all have their own direct market experience, combine that with market-based acquisitions with their entire teams, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It starts to become multiplication.
Absolutely. All right.
Hey guys, let me just ask a question because I know a lot of
Sure.
shareholders are thinking the same thing I am. We're talking about M&A. We're talking about bringing on new deals. It's one of the things I love about SIRC is that we're growing quickly. We just talked about financing. Let's talk about dilution just for a second. You guys are all finance guys. You've got a bunch of funding coming in, $100 million hopefully coming in. We've got a lot of very aggressive M&A plans going forward. Tell me about how you hope to structure these deals. What sort of dilution could shareholders be looking at over the next, let's just say 12 months or even 3 months, whatever time frame you're comfortable talking about?
I'll dig in first on this one. This is always a tricky question. Certainly we want to bring accretive acquisitions that drive the company forward. And as most people know, most organizations do acquisitions with a combination of cash consideration and equity consideration. Certainly our acquisition history has shown that we do a little bit of both, right? So we also understand the sentiment around further dilution. So just know that we're certainly balancing that. Okay. There's a reason why we've held off on uncorking some acquisitions. Now, some of the partners that we had under LOI that we looked at acquiring were great organizations, but when we really got into the due diligence, it just wasn't the right fit. So nothing against that company. It just meant that maybe it was better off the way the partnership was structured without combining the businesses. So we have been much more judicious with our due diligence and trying to make sure that we're going slower with closing acquisitions. You know, the Heartland Solar acquisition is a good example. We LOI'd that with the patch of LOIs earlier in the year. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what month it was. I mean, I'll say February, right? It's the only one that's closing here, right? The dilution impact of that is going to be very minor because it's properly valued. And if you look at how we did it, Bob Zarbo, the owner of Heartland, been a W-2 employee of our organization for 6 months now. So he's already yielding an amazing return. He's a wonderful team member. He works very closely with all three of us, especially with Brad and Joe. So, you know, and I see the question here, what about outsourcing instead of acquiring? And that's really what I'm getting at, right? We want to date before we get married more now because we did enough acquisitions and diluted plenty. Like, I get it, right? So we want to be very cautious about doing acquisitions that further dilute our stock and have that impact on our shareholders. That's why we've held off on a lot of them. The lack of getting our funding closed as fast and the lingering Form 10 certainly impacted it. And Brad hit that on the last Q&A. He was very transparent about it. And we want to be transparent with our shareholders. So looking at that, absolutely, we want to leverage some of our funding for cash-based acquisitions with the idea of not diluting as much and not having so much of the acquisition purchase price be based in equity consideration. That doesn't mean that we're not going to offer equity as a part of acquisitions, because
Of course.
most all companies do that. We have heard our shareholders, we've examined our strategy, and we've been much more judicious with that. So it's caused us to focus more on structuring organically. We also hit what I would say a critical mass with acquisitions, where we integrated enough people into our organization where now we're going through what can just be described as a restructuring. It's a healthy restructuring. It's a sales and general administrative restructuring, but it's like acquisitions and business combinations are just like new employees. Everybody's new for a little bit, right? So, you know, we had that question a second ago, assimilating them into our organization. Take for example, the company that I came from, Balance. It's become our shared services backbone. I'm in the studio in our office right now. We've got 14,000 square feet of office space. We've got almost 40 W-2 staff members that work out of this office every day. I had a shareholder joke that he was just going to show up at our office and StockTwits not too long ago. I was like, well, we have armed guards at the office, man. Like, you know, it's a Class A office. We can't just come in, you know. But it's all of those people had to learn how to work at SIRC and adapt to being a part of our enterprise, right? So I don't want to get too far off topic here, but there's a lot of reasons why you want to slow down a little bit on the acquisition roll and make sure we're making the right acquisitions at the right time with the right combination of cash and equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you're segging perfectly into the next question anyway, because you were talking about the shared services backbone. So this is a perfect opportunity to, to move on and ask, with all of the great efforts you've made in creating, the shared services backbone, how much savings as a percentage of sales have you achieved so far, and how much remains to be achieved?
This is a wonderful question. I mean, to me, this type of internal rate of return is what we want to yield from smart acquisitions and good partnerships. So, let me address it like this. Our growth has been so strong because of this. Like, for example, in 2021, our revenues grew 388% year over year, driven by a series of accretive acquisitions, with 2022 growth spurred by strong organic growth. Like, let that sink in. We just talked about that operationally. And cross-selling opportunities. So all of this has enabled our shared services backbone, made possible through the important acquisition of Balance and our reorganization, right? So we became profitable in 2021 and reported approximately $14 million in net income and a 3-cent diluted EPS with approximately a 16.6% net profit margin. Thus, we've developed quickly into a platform company, able to leverage economies of scale from our shared services back office and our sales platforms that have helped us to enhance our gross margins from 25, almost 26%, 25.8% in 2020 to 48% in 2021.
Amazing. And actually, there's a couple times that I saw this question asked, and you were talking about EPS, and this is a question I've seen probably, I'd say maybe a dozen times since the last Q&A and since the previous revenue guidance, where a few shareholders had asked, I guess there was some confusion about whether the EPS guidance that was given of I believe it was 5 cents for 2022 and 7 to 8 cents for 2023, whether that was the total expected annually or whether that was the average expected per quarter.
This is a great question, and we just examined this last week at our executive summit, right? So, it's something where, I always like to let Wanda be the person that puts her signature on this, but total expected annually.
Perfect.
And I would like to say the target is 5 cents earning EPS, right? For this year and 2023. Like, we are reverse engineering these numbers, and that's why I dug into that a little bit more than how much savings as a percentage of sales have you achieved, right? Because there's more to unpack there. But if we want to balance all of that, and it goes into the acquisition question we just discussed, okay? We want to balance all that, reverse engineer that for healthy growth.
Absolutely. And, I'm hopefully that answers shareholders' questions, because I'd seen that one several times throughout the time period. So let's go ahead and move on to we talked about cash flow a little bit already. This one should go by pretty quickly. Does the company have sufficient cash flow to achieve its 2022 and 2023 goals and initiatives?
So we do. We kind of jumped ahead at this one a few questions ago,
Yeah,
and that's
we did.
fine.
Yeah.
So, yes is the answer. Also, as we discussed a few questions ago, we've got a little over 100 million of financing structured and pending that's going to enhance cash flow to drive our 2022 and 2023 growth initiatives. And keep in mind, that's just like the first tranches of this financing. That's why I say we're looking at long-term financing partnerships with the folks that we're working with. And I know Arbiter has been name dropped and everybody's familiar with that, but the other couple of financing partners that we're working with, very well known. Also, we have deep relationships with them. These are people that I know, people that Dave knows, people that Wanda knows, people we've gotten to know their entire teams. very closely, especially as we've become so well known at investor conferences and in things. So we've got wonderful partners that help us with that. And cash flow is always something of concern to the operator integrators that are running a company. Okay, so we consistently hold our division leaders accountable for their P&Ls, and that's where it starts. We want to run an efficient business, and we want ownership operationally to be taken by the stakeholders that work in our company. That is how me and Brad and the people that work for us know how to ensure that we're always going to have sufficient cash flow to meet our goals in our growth initiatives. So I know Brad had to take a bio break. I don't know if he's back or not yet.
Like being on an airplane where they won't shut off the seatbelt sign, but I am back.
So yeah, I want you to chime in a little bit here from your perspective on the cash flow discussion.
We've been working really hard to get more efficient with our cash flow, especially on the residential projects. We've been working on installing much quicker on shorter timelines. We've been working aggressively on improving our process to apply for and secure permits, do site inspections, everything we can to move up so that we can get the glass on the roof much quicker and get paid for it. The other thing that we're looking at is we should be looking at a very large boost over the last quarter with the new financing project we have with REMCourse, which will allow us to provide financing for solar installations for folks that don't have any credit score at all. We feel that once we go back through our list, which we've already started to do, there will be several hundred jobs that were credit rejected over the past 12 months or so that we'll be able to put back into the pipeline, contact those folks, get them back in the game, and recover those revenues.
Yeah, and it's not just, Brad, it's not just for our rejected files for credit reasons, and it's not just people that don't have any credit score, but it's people who have really taken a hit over the last couple of years. There's a lot of really good, hardworking people that have had to make sacrifices and have had to make juggling decisions on, what bill gets paid over another. What's exciting about that is that we're really the first to market with that financing solution, and there's other would-be competitors that are going to want to utilize that. We're going to be able to use that access to help them grow their pipeline, to grow their business, and for us to do the same as a way to target the right kind of companies to partner with that have existing pipelines of projects that they can turn on that they have otherwise not been able to move on, right? And it's not just blind faith. The program requires that people have to show 6 months of history of paying their electric bill. But remember, if we're just walking in and offering a net savings to somebody, it's kind of hard to say that that's a huge credit risk, right? Especially if you think of it as an essential utility that people otherwise would have to pay anyways. And we're offering people who have been having a hard time credit-wise and cash flow-wise, which is a lot of us, to save money without having to come out of pocket, right? And so a lot of people who get into a bad credit situation, they end up on this never-ending treadmill where everywhere you go now, borrowing costs more, so it just puts you at a disadvantage. I think it's really a great sign for our company to be heads up and have some common sense underwriting when it comes to stuff like that.
Well put.
Absolutely. Moving us along now, because I know we've still got quite a bit of ground to cover and quite a bit of good ground to cover that I know some people will be pretty excited about. Next up, what is the plan to obtain more large commercial contracts? For example, retailer parking lots such as Walmart or Target for EV charging or other major commercial solar installations?
Well, they called me.
Exactly.
This
Well
is Joe.
said.
Look, we've got a pipeline that we're bringing over, and we're excited to have this new strategic partnership between AED and SIRC. I've come over to be a full-time employee with SIRC, but there's been an ongoing sales effort nationwide in the commercial and industrial space for years now. A lot of projects that have been in development that are now able to get sponsored and funded. And so we're excited to be able to bring projects into completion that have been originated and worked on for literally years now. And so it's been a frustrating couple of years not being able to, in some cases, bring some of those forward. But now it's game on. And the great news is word gets out, right? There's so many people. This is a young industry still, especially in the commercial space. There are so many funds out there, independent power producers that talk a big game, and then when it comes down to it, they can't actually deliver. When the word gets out that we're delivering on funding these projects, I'm going to tell you something. This is the most referral-rich business that I've ever seen. You know, businesses talk to one another, and then there's also the keeping up with the Joneses thing that has to happen too, right? But when people start to realize that, wait a minute, SIRC is offering a vertically integrated solution that can work across many markets, even those that haven't been really strong just for solar. When we start talking about energy as a service and becoming the grid at the site of consumption, being able to do those types of innovative projects, it's not going to take long until word gets out, right? And those car dealerships are going to be knocking on our door. Those schools that don't want to have outages are going to be knocking on our door. You know, those manufacturing facilities, those hotels, hospitality, they don't want to have outages. They don't want to have brownouts. They don't want to lose, you know, they don't want to be a stadium full of people and lose $200,000 worth of food and beverage because there's a brownout for half an hour and a safety issue, right? So we're going to see some major growth there. And guys, you're going to be excited to see some of the forthcoming announcements on projects that we've been working on for a while behind the scenes.
The other thing I would say to follow up on that, especially on the commercial projects, are very few of them are just single projects. Most of them either have add-ons or they're in a specific market where there will be significant add-ons. Mojave Farms is a really good example. Once that's up and then under construction, I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 or 3 or 4 more projects start right behind it. That could literally be its own business. We're working with a major financial institution that has multiple locations. We just recently bid on a project in the Midwest, which is basically to install EV charger installations in an entire city. And 50% of their bid criteria is experience in installing EV chargers. So I just think the upside for the commercial side of the business is, like I said before, unlimited. And it's, you know, like I said, there's not one project, they just lead into the next one.
Did you just say that you guys are bidding on a project for electric charging for a whole city? Did I hear you
Yes.
say that correctly?
Yes.
Carry on.
26 locations.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys read between the lines there, but this agricultural microgrid that we're working on is with an incredible counterparty that actually wants to partner with us to proliferate these types of projects all throughout the world to existing relationships that they have. So this quickly went from being an awesome job to an awesome pilot that is now going to be duplicated with existing relationships that they carry with them into the game.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's you know, bidding on a project for an entire city is definitely next level, and something that's going to be very exciting for everyone to hear. These are, you know, not just small beans anymore. These are massive deals. I want to move things along a little bit because I know later on we still have to talk about one of everyone's, along this line, one of everyone's favorite deals, the Mojave Farms project. It's coming up a little bit later on, but in the meantime, we've got some questions on specific divisions of SIRC. Right now, we'll move on to balance claims. Can you discuss some of the changes that have taken place in the balance headquarters in the last 6 months?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take this one. It's Troy. Balance has seen a lot of growth in its core business services and third-party administration business. in addition to developing quickly over the past 14 months into being SIRC shared services headquarters. So Balance is the feeder system for our roofing to solar program, and also a stalwart brand in the roofing and insurance side of the industry. Balance serves as a strategic relationship hub. We're a founding member of the Catalyst Group, which is a nonprofit that I founded with a few other industry leaders back in 2017. It's a nonprofit educational corporation. It's one of the industry's most well-known nonprofit educational corporations. If you guys want to check it out, I'm sure you have already. It's thecatalystgroup.co. It's a 501c6 nonprofit. So it brings together contractors and vendors to advance and educate the industry, which is the hallmark of what Balance has done, right? We took something very boring and made it exciting through a good brand and marketing and high service. And now we have thousands of contractors as our clients, right? So, I've been blessed to serve as the president of the Catalyst Group for the past 4 years. I just entered my first year as the treasurer. I needed a little bit more time, focus on my 80-hour-a-week job at SIRC, right? So, with all of that, we've also evolved the nearly, I talked about this a little bit ago, 14,000 square feet of office space we have in Indianapolis here to accommodate SIRC's burgeoning growth. So our office that we've been in for years in Indianapolis is going through a massive construction remodeling, which we got our landlord to pay for, right? Because they want to keep our entire floor of people here, especially with what's going on. And we've also got a whole floor empty above us to grow into. We're expecting a lot of growth in this office. And so, Balance in its core business as the leading TPA, third-party administrator, we provide admin services, estimating and construction file project management, and billing services to roofing and other contractors nationwide. So we've continued to see tremendous growth in that profitable business. We've got 30 plus W2 staff in that division, some of which also work cross-functionally at SIRC in shared services. We worked really close with our real estate tenant brokers and our landlord to build out our entire floor of office space, to custom remodel it to fit the growth needs for SIRC. We're doing a lot right now to centralize shared services, everything from our inbound call center to accounting to marketing to customer service into this Indianapolis shared services headquarters. So amongst the Balance staff, so all of our app workers across all shifts are in one office. All the humans working hard, doing great work at a desk all day are in a similar cultural environment. So it's been great. The space is still under construction, which has been fun, right? We started this build out over the winter, and keep in mind we have to phase it because we have humans working here every day. We don't have a work from home policy at Balance. Everyone comes to work every day at shared services, right? So it keeps the staff on their toes, yeah, especially when the air conditioner goes out due to construction in the middle of summer in Indianapolis. So, it's always fun. We just went through that for a week or two. We've got our marketing team on site, whole marketing department, Savage Media, and we sublet some of the office space to them. We've got studios and whatnot here, and they do a lot of work for SIRC as well as most of all the other subsidiaries from a branding and a website marketing standpoint and general CMO type services. So we've got great studios here. It's fun. It's a high energy atmosphere at Balance. The next 6 months are going to be really cool. The construction completes. So, we have a very tenured staff at Balance, a mature company. At acquisition, it was, had been operating for a long time. So, people are very excited to spread out into the new office space. It's been custom fit for Balance and to support SIRC shared services growth.
Very detailed. We can move into a second question about Balance, which is the other aspects of the company's operations are all very straightforward. Some shareholders have said Balance Claims is not. Can you explain how balance claims interweaves with the other SIRC companies to provide overall value?
Yeah, of course. So Balance is the national leader in providing business process outsourcing, what we call BPO, and TPA, third-party administration services to contractors. Most of our 1,000+ clients are roofing, solar, or remediation contractors, meaning they're target platform customers for SIRC. That's what made Balance such a good acquisition target, in addition to our very tenured staff and well-organized back office. So we provide all kinds of administrative shared services to these contractors. So we have a shared services department that pays for itself and delivers profitable revenue for SIRC while providing all kinds of administrative shared services to SIRC as a profitable company. So Balance has been in business under the Balance brand since 2015. So a little over 6 years before being acquired by SIRC. We operated under a different brand for a couple of years prior to that. Balance is a very mature business. In year 10, really, if you super collide those years, founded in 2012, that continues to evolve. So we provide critical business services such as estimating and proposals, supplementing, which especially on the insurance side of roofing is a huge component of the business. It drives revenue and profit for contractors, and construction file and CRM project management and third-party billing for contractors. This allows contractors, roofers, solar contractors, to focus on selling, building, and invoicing and collecting, i.e. they're outsourcing a shared services department. So we also at Balance work closely with all major service and manufacturing vendors to contractors. Think brands like shingle manufacturers like Atlas or Certainteed, software providers like SalesRabbit, CompanyCam, AccuLynx, JobNimbus, all the leading law firms in the space, public adjusting firms, many other major software companies such as iRoofing. We'll talk about them in a second. They just got acquired by Porch, major home services company. So Balance is a trusted resource to thousands of contractors and other vendors in the space, helping their businesses to run smoothly and profitably. We are the feeder system for many of these organizations to cross over into solar for residential, commercial, or other large-scale commercial alternative energy projects with the SIRC platform. I like to say Balance feeds the monster.
Thanks.
Awesome.
And
Elijah, you want to go ahead and move on to the next question?
Yeah, we're going to move on.
I mean, are you
Absolutely.
guys, real quick before you do, are you guys fully grasping what he just said? I mean, think about this for a second. Those vendors, those companies trust Balance to balance their books. They're going to trust us with their clients that want to go solar, right? And they look at this industry and the tailwinds as a huge opportunity to start cross-selling themselves. So when they're having their shareholder conversations, they're saying, hey, one of the great things about our business is that we're going to be able to cross over into alternative energy because we have a relationship with Balance that was acquired by SIRC. They're excited about sending us their book of business. Even if we just did solar projects for all of those companies' locations, we'd have work to do for years. Never mind all their clients. So it really can't be overstated the amount of impact that what Troy just said has on our ability to do business development.
No, absolutely not. Balance Claims has become an integral part of the SIRC family, and we would like to know, moving forward with the next question, how that translates to revenue for SIRC. So can you provide a sample timeline of a new Balance Claims client coming to you for the first time, all the way through ultimate revenue generation from that client, so that people can understand kind of how this brings some money into the SIRC ecosystem?
So the cool thing about this is Balance's revenue is recognized very quick. It's a cash in, cash out services business, unlike the rest of SIRC's company, which is a construction company. So it's work in progress, construction in progress accounting, and and we'd recognize revenue elsewhere under ASC 606, right? We talked about that a little bit on the last Q&A, and we could do a whole hour on that. But so Balance is a sales and marketing machine in the industry, and we're signing up about 30 net new clients every month on average for our business to business services at Balance. And keep in mind, these are all roofers that want to get into solar. Okay, like Joe just said. A typical client may be a small residential to mid-size to one of the top 100 largest roofing or other contractors in the nation, which also, yes, gives us illumination into who might be potential great Texas construction company acquisitions. So our dedicated and tenured sales teams at Balance are split into a hunter-farmer model. So we get new clients implemented and up and running really fast, like a couple of days, as they need us to make an impact for them quickly. So we provide business services and are completing estimates and proposals and construction file and project administration and or supplementing our billing services for them like within a week. We invoice all clients for completed workload weekly. And we recognize that revenue quick as soon as it's invoiced, and we collect net 5, right? So we don't want their bills to be huge because we're providing services to them on a weekly basis. It's all under contract. So it's not just ad hoc, send us a project. They go through a consultative sales process with Balance and sign a master services agreement that dictates their pricing for what we're going to do for them, right? So a new client would contract with Balance on a Monday, potentially, be live with workload before the end of that week if they are prepared and attentive to work with our implementation team. We would be invoicing them the following week, Friday, for work completed, and then collecting that income by the following Wednesday. This is all recognized revenue for SIRC. So we're blessed to be trusted at Balance by thousands of contractors. We have many of them have been very long-term customers. Some of the largest contracting names in the industry, right? Our client list is relatively well known without getting into it. So we're then able to help them explore the many other growth possibilities that the SIRC platform can bring to their business, whether it be in solar through our dealer model or direct sales training for solar. They want to build that right into their business and be a self-fulfilling install company, or EV. Brad just named my company, just changed the Balance name to Balance EV in the chat about a minute ago, because everything has to end in EV, right? Or commercial or microgrid or other. So it really is a feeder system in addition to being, let me put it like this. When Dave knew SIRC was going to be on this amazing growth trajectory, what was his option? Quickly hire 30 people and put them in an office without them knowing what to do and hope they could get up to speed quick? Or buy a company that already did that and could feed clients and partners and reputation into our platform?
Seems pretty self-explanatory to me. The answer to that is simple. One more question on Balance, and then we can move on. Do you think Balance will be spun off and IPO as its own standalone company in the future in the pursuit of unlocking shareholder value?
I'm sorry. Dave and I looked at this question too yesterday. We had a good chuckle about it. Balance is home in places with SIRC. It will only become a more integral part of SIRC, which we're achieving advancement of our shared services industries as SIRC grows, right? That's how we best unlock shareholder value with Balance.
Absolutely. All right. So we've gone with Balance for a while. Time to move on to Plemco. Brad, that's your department. What advantages does Plemco and SIRC's burgeoning EV division have over major EV charging players such as ChargePoint, Blink, and EVgo?
Again, and The easiest way to put it is just the full service aspect, the ability to do the design, the engineering, construction, the installation, commissioning. A couple of the companies you mentioned there, ChargePoint has a much different model than ours. ChargePoint will install the equipment and then they keep all or almost all of the revenue. What we found when we modeled is we prefer to take our profit up front on the installation. A lot of our installations are in cities, governments, libraries, city halls, police stations. Look at a 10-year life cycle on the EV chargers themselves. Our modeling shows that the payback on that is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So, and it is much better for us to take our profit up front and allow those government entities to take the revenue off the machines for 10 years because it helps offset the cost of government. The other company listed on here, let's see. Blink, and another one. Blink just bought SEMA Connect, which is our go-to manufacturer for level 2 and level 2 plus chargers. So I think that will just strengthen our relationship with them. Blink has a lot of money behind it. And basically SEMA Connect now can also provide financing for EV charger installations and help support us. And the other company on there that I was thinking about was Clipper Creek, which is our go-to level 2 dummy charger, which we use primarily for residential installations. They just got bought by Enphase, which is one of our largest producers of inverters, and we're one of their large customers on the solar side. So our leverage with that supplier, the combination of Clipper Creek and Enphase, just improved our purchasing position with that company because we more than doubled our volume with them. So I think that we have a unique position in how we approach EV charging. I think that we're going to break into those commercial aspects, which EV charging is one part of a larger bundle. I think that's also going to be a very unique product offering. So I think the positioning of Plimco, just like Balance, offers some very unique opportunities, and I would consider it an accelerator. You went back to Balance. Selling Balance off would be like, selling the farm and keeping the tractor. I mean, basically, you'd be giving up an incredible lead generation piece for us for a very short-sighted view of profit. So I think that those two companies are going to be really strategic in our growth.
Hey, Brad, this is to add a quick question for you. You were talking about Enphase. Obviously, shareholders are aware of the partnership we have there. Early on, SIRC was a Tesla kind of certified installer of battery home chargers, etc. Is there still a partnership there with Tesla at all? Have you guys started installing any products of theirs?
Our primary relationship with Tesla is on batteries, so we do a lot of their battery walls with our solar. We don't do much in the way of EV charging installations for them. They have kind of their own deal there.
Okay. Have you seen an uptick in even the home battery installations?
Yeah, actually, that's one of the adders that we've been doing quite well with in the Southern California market specifically.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. I know that name gets thrown around a lot, so appreciate you answering. We can totally move forward.
Perfect. Next question. Will there be a public EV charging system powered by solar panels coming soon?
That's really unlikely. There will be some solar power, and the best way to describe that is most homes in the U.S. have a 200 amp service panel. A level 2 charger, the slowest one pulls 32 amps. A level 2 plus charger pulls 70 amps, and the level 3, the fast chargers, pull anywhere from 80 to 250 amps. So when you start looking at the ability of solar to charge electric vehicles, it's really limited, especially in high traffic, high volume areas. I think you'll see the applicability of that is in remote areas. I think there's some good opportunities there. And you have to have plenty of sunlight too, but I really don't see that as being a core part of the installation process. I see that as being an ancillary opportunity for remote locations, basically.
Understood. To add any other questions on that one, or are you good with that?
No. I'm excited to get to some of the questions we got coming up here.
Perfect. So, time to lift the veil a little bit on one of the divisions that people have been very curious about, the financing division. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the financing division? How does the company generate and recognize revenue from this division? And what is its long-term vision and potentials in terms of revenue and addressable market?
Joe, you've been patient for the last few questions. Get loud for the shareholders a bit on this one.
Oh yeah, this is the best part, guys. Listen to me. The business that we're in is structured finance. There's some equipment that we get to play around with and install once we put together a structured financing package to not just build, not just install, but to own and operate a cash flow positive asset that's cash flow positive right from day one. What got me excited to get into this industry almost 7 years ago and jump in with both feet was when I realized that for the first time, you can actually invest in, ready for this? Commercial real estate income property. This is a new asset class in the commercial real estate income property collection, right? Everybody thinks of shopping plazas and office parks and multifamily. I know my friends out there love their multifamily and their self-storage. And me and my business partner, we were going to be in the self-storage business, man. We were going to have some multifamilies. And then we realized, wait a minute, if you put on your thinking cap and work with private investors that have a good sized tax appetite, or companies that are paying a lot in taxes, and you find a site host who's got a great renewable energy resource, available to them, like let's say a big roof or parking lot or field somewhere, and there's an incentive program available or a community solar program available, which, by the way, we've been doing community solar in Massachusetts here since before they called it that. My mentor started in the wind industry before there was a monopole computer controlled wind turbine. The first one he worked on is on its way to the Smithsonian Institute. We've got like the Yoda of renewables on our team. And you look at it and you say, wait a minute, you can trade in the tax incentives in some way to create a project company that allows for you to essentially get your down payment covered by the value of the tax incentives in a way that allows for that partner that you bring in to make 115, 125, 135% of their initial investment in the first year. And you end up then adding to that a debt stack or preferred equity stack that's forcing you into a cash flow positive position, right? Because now you're looking at the value of this asset as being an income property. You're looking at it and saying, okay, what kind of revenue is it producing? What kind of fixed expenses do I have out over 25, 30 years? The value of this property or this infrastructure project is driven by the revenue that it generates after expenses. The net operating income divided by the sale price is the cap rate, right? And so when you go to the bank and you say, look, I'd like to get a loan for 65, 70% of the project cost. We're a publicly traded company. We've got a cool balance sheet. We can do some neat things now. What do you say you give us a loan for 75%? Then we bring in a third-party tax equity investor that we like. What do you say that 30% ITC and, bonus depreciation, maybe that's worth 30% of the project cost to you. Maybe that's worth 25% of the project cost to you. The loan that we took out forces us into a cash flow positive position. We've now contracted essentially with ourselves by creating a project company that we get to own a part of. And we end up being able to make money to build the system, which is sort of the traditional way of making money in this business. And then on top of that, add the long-term positive cash flow that comes from owning and operating these systems in a limited partner position initially that allows for you to maintain some service revenues and things like that. But with the right structured financing situation and deal making on the front end, after the tax incentives have been utilized, you can do a partnership flip where SIRC ends up being the, giant shareholder or the majority shareholder in that project company for the next 20 years, 30 years. And so those cash flows start to add to the money that you're making on your shared services, the money that you're making on your development services, on your construction services. And over time, once we've built those cash flows up to a certain point with projects that have long-term life cycles, many of these projects have useful lives of 25, 30 years, you realize that there's a whole market out there that's really hungry for long-term positive cash flows that are predictable and that are stable, right? And so the initial project financing that we have to do initially to go onesie twosie ends up becoming a securitization opportunity on the secondary market. So now you've got this flywheel effect that comes from being able to now increase the value of your portfolio by decreasing your cost of capital in larger tranches. And then you realize, wait a minute, this structured finance division is the business that we're in, right? None of these projects happen without capital. But when you structure the capital right, it pays you and you're cash flow positive with the project in the very first year. It's really exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's I was taking notes like the whole time you were just chatting. So that might be the first time most of us have really had a detailed explanation about the financing division. So thank you. That was awesome.
I'll geek out with it any day, guys.
Team, I know some of this. This is a long Q&A, and we want to provide these type of details because this is the competitive differentiator of our organization. Having this food court of business under one umbrella is enormous for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know some people were, and I mentioned this in the chat, but I know some people were talking about the length. The intention of this particular Q&A, because we have so many more people, with eyes on the company who want to know what you guys are all about, this is intended to serve as, a comprehensive top to bottom look at every aspect of the business. It's designed to answer pretty much as much detail as we can get, without, stepping into things you guys can't talk about, so that anyone who has an interest in the company, can spread this information far and wide and kind of let everyone know what you guys are about, because there's a lot to, see here. So we're getting into the last category of questions, finally. And I know it's one that is going to seg into something that a lot of people have been asking about as well. How many multi-year contracts is the company currently working on?
Well, that's a great question. We hit on this a little bit in a couple of questions about how just use a car dealership example. How very few people own just one car dealership, right? So one opportunity leads to 10, right? So, the answer is several. I'm going to let Brad and Joe dig in on these next few questions. But we didn't get to that big $640 million number of our, commercial pipeline over the next 2 years without having multi-year contracts lined up. Brad?
Well, my answer is really easy. All of them. It's that simple. I mean, there isn't a single contract that won't have additional add-on projects right behind it, or that
Are
will
you
have
guys all
further
still
down the
there?
road.
Everything just went quiet.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're all here.
Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Joe at this point.
Great. Sorry, Troy, was that a segment you're handing the mic off to Brad there? Or?
Yeah. Did you not hear Brad's response?
I did not. I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, his answer, I'll summarize. And then,
The shareholders heard it, so that's okay.
yeah. So, Brett, the answer is all of them, right? So, very few of our commercial projects, our B2G, B2Ag, B2C, C&I projects are not multi-year. Joe will dig in, and I think, Joe, we're going to get into Mojave in a second, so that's a good one just to highlight because it's a publicly known project about what that looks like and how it applies to every single project we're doing in that space.
Evergreen pipeline. So you guys saw a press release maybe today about some of the work that we're doing with some Hard Rock hotels here in the United States and also abroad. We're working with multiple operators that are working with that brand. It's a very active development environment right now with new hotels that are going up. Some existing ones with groups that have plans on others. So really, if you take just a snapshot of that one set of projects, there's over 20 locations over the course of the next multiple years that we can move into one after the other. There's a question coming up, or that was put into the Q&A about the biggest projects that we have. There are some utility scale projects that we're working on that are multi-year projects. There are some referrals that are forthcoming on agricultural microgrids. I would say that some of our biggest projects have yet to be announced. There might even be some stadiums that we're going to do in the future. And so the future is very bright. And with the financing platform that I'm bringing forward and the gauntlet that I'm putting down for our financing and investment partners is to say that we want to build enterprise value by owning and operating the largest distributed generation utility company in the world. And that means that every project that we build over the course of a couple of years, we get to keep for some number of decades thereafter. And there's a lot of people that are involved in this current iteration of SIRC who are looking at this opportunity as pulling together the best people and the best resources that we have available to make a run at being that next world-class household name that people look back on one day and say, hey, here's one of the companies that rebuilt America. Here's one of the companies that redefined what it looked like to grow communities and to do affordable housing in places that aren't necessarily connected to the grid, to bring farming indoors, to bring it to locations all over the place that don't have to be shipped in from this place or that, to bring true energy independence to a household, into a farming operation, to the convenience store, to the Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when there's a big storm, I don't like to have to drive very far to get my coffee. I want every Dunkin' Donuts to have a microgrid on site so that they can be up and running when I need them.
Wow. If that statement isn't a mic drop, that one's a tough one to follow up. Almost.
Well, and since Joe loves the Patriots, it storms a lot where he lives.
Yeah, that's a tough one to follow. Not many questions left now. And I almost think that may be the best little tidbit we've ever gotten on a Q&A for SIRC yet. Talk about quotables. Let's move on to quick question. What are the big obstacles that can affect the delivery date of a commercial project right now, and are they within the company's control?
Interconnection challenges are outside of our control. We still, in many markets, have to get along with our principal competition, which is the legacy grid. We are trying to become better at that with every project that we do, and with the integration of storage. In many ways, we're able to become a better partner to the legacy grid. And I want to make sure that I classify this correctly. When I say that the legacy grid is our principal competitor, I'm not mad at them. But man, are they top heavy, and man, are they slow, right? There are places where right now we can put a project under contract, do the engineering, submit for interconnection, and still have to wait a year to get the approval to go ahead and move forward and build the project. So you'll see us moving in directions that have us in many ways trying our best, especially with larger projects, to find opportunities to build our renewable energy system, our alternative energy solutions off grid, and to remove those obstacles that are outside of our control. But certainly interconnecting to the legacy grid, where you've got a grid that really is very old, and one that typically requires very costly upgrades for us to be able to integrate the new things into it, is a limiting factor on speed. But talk about quotes. My favorite one is from Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. He says that persistence is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. And if there's a way, we'll find it. We'll stick with it. You might hear about a project going under contract and might not see it built for quite a while. But at the end of the day, if it takes a couple of years to bring it online and we get to make money from it for the next 25, 30 years, unfortunately or fortunately, the 1 or 2 years that it took to get it up and running in the beginning is just going to seem like a blip on the radar in the end.
I couldn't agree more.
I would step in and reiterate that. I mean, even for the EV chargers, we're currently contracted with 26 locations in LA County, and I can't do a thing until SCE is done. So it doesn't take them a year, but it does take them a couple months, depending on what power is available. Solar and microgrids are saving and converting to alternative energy. A lot of the EV charger installations are adding to the pull. So a lot of the places weren't really designed to be able to put that in, and it takes a while to get it set up. I think the government will still be somewhat of a constraint, although when they start to decide to drop bids, they drop them in a hurry. And then the last thing affecting EV charging is supply chain. Level 2 plus chargers are readily available. But when you start to get into some of the fast chargers, the supply chain lead time on those can be anywhere from 20 to 46 weeks right now.
Yeah, that's quite a delay, but it's, perfectly understandable with the speed that, larger government moves. Moving into the next question about Plemco. The Sourcewell contract with Plemco was signed at the end of January. Can you provide further details on this agreement?
Yeah, the Sourcewell is a 5-year contract, and it basically is EV charging, some lighting projects as well. So we were awarded Region 8 and 9, which is Northern and Southern California. We've already looked at and bid on a couple projects. We have not heard back from them yet. It's not going to be a large volume of projects, but it will be some really solid projects that, again, will lead into other opportunities. So that's kind of where that project stands.
Fair enough. And now we really get to one that I know everyone's wanting to hear about. Can we get an update on the Mojave Farms and Georgia Schools projects?
Yeah, I'm going to let Brad and Joe
go ahead.
dig into the details here. I want to add this nugget before these guys get into the details on this. We're MediaTek. Thank you, Elijah, and us are working really closely. We're trying to get the Mojave Farms team on an upcoming Q&A session. It might be one of the only ones that is as exciting as all this detail. So Dave's working on that with MediaTek. I just wanted to tee that up. I can't promise it's going to happen, but we're putting it out there.
Now you let the cat out of the bag.
So I just want to give a little teaser. All right, Joe, dig in a little bit here.
Well, we had an opportunity to get together in Las Vegas at the family that we're working with. That's a multi-generational farming family that's got a great reputation in the industry. One of their family members is an attorney that's been helping with the deal structure. He's done a great job of representing, his personal interests and the professional interests at the same time with some partners, recusing himself from some of the key negotiations when it comes to, being a family member of the farmers, but brought us all together for a meeting at his office in Las Vegas this past week, right before our leadership alignment meetings, and we got to sit down and look each other in the eye and talk about our bigger goals, not just for this project, but just in general, around what this project can mean. And what we came away from with that meeting was a really detailed review of the fourth iteration now of a really incredible front-end engineering and design package that's been expertly put together by the team at AED with the help of Brad and Bob Zarbo and their teams. There's been some incredible innovations made both on the agricultural and energy side and tying those things together. We're starting to get into some of the real, nuts and bolts of what's the best way to efficiently design the system to effectively use renewables to bring the water that's needed to turn this desert into a lush farmland, into the possession of the farmers so that it's always there. Make hay while the sun shines is one of the things that we were talking about. Using long-term water storage to utilize the renewable resource when it's there, to draw it up from underground, the water, to store it in retention ponds that are going to be built for up to 5 days without sun, which we all agreed was going to be pretty rare in that part of the country. But really just to make sure that there was, one bit of security after another. We talked about alternative fuel sources that could be generated on site using nothing but renewables and the water that's there. And we're working on what really is a state-of-the-art, smart, integrated microgrid system that will be actively borrowing from one site to the other, and when it's done, producing upwards of 4,000 acres of farmland that ultimately will grow feedstock for a wholesale client that is one of the largest companies around the world in the agricultural side of things for their own uses. And they happen to be not just the buyer of the output product, but also a client of farming advisory services. So think of this farming operation that we're working with in a way as sort of like a balance for the farming industry, where other farmers say, hey, you guys know how to do this better than we do. Why don't you help us? And so this particular client that buys all their stuff from them and is going to be the off taker, if you will, for the byproduct that's grown, they actually are a neighbor that have already bought and they own a farm that's 10 times the size as our current iteration. And their only concern is that what we've been showing so far is too good to be true. And they said to me that if it's not too good to be true, then they're going to want to not just do it at this larger location that they have here next to the Mojave farm that we're working on now, but also in 32 countries around the world where they have operations that are all running on diesel fuel right now. And these guys are getting killed. They're actually, if their farming operation or the land that they own next door is 10 times the size of what we're working on right now, the amount of it that they're currently actively farming is less than half of what we're planning to farm with their neighbors, because they can only afford to farm that much. And it's really just a 5% or so of the overall amount that they'd like to be doing at that site. And so we talked about the idea of now that the farming group that we're working with is so comfortable with the design and the strategy and the engineering that we're putting forward, they want to now push things forward and advance things with that other client, so that together in a partnership, SIRC and this farming agricultural multi-generational family expert can co-develop these kinds of operations on a go-forward basis. And the idea now is to take the existing project and add to it this other larger project right next door to gain even more economies of scale. And that project ends up now being the biggest one on our board. And it's probably one that will keep us quite busy for a really long time, because the nice thing is we're not doing things that we have any concern over being possible. What we're doing is we're taking best practices and combining them. And without boring you guys too much, I want you to remember that all the ingredients for the first ever chair always existed, right? But people sat on the ground and sat on rocks for a really long time before somebody gathered up the parts of the first chair and put it together in such a way that there was a chair to sit on. It's not because the parts weren't there. They were always there. It's just that nobody had sat down to put them all together in that organizational way. And that's what I think we're doing with this agricultural microgrid project. It really is a career maker, and for my mentor, very much a special capstone project. Not that he'll stop doing special projects, but he's really excited about this. And when he gets excited, we all get excited, because this guy's done everything for longer than I've been alive.
Wow, there's a lot to take in that. The first thing that comes to mind that I'd like to ask, and just one quick follow-up question is, assuming that these incredible technological solutions and these agricultural microgrids are once this all comes to fruition, and hypothetically speaking, moves to a situation where it can be implemented in this other farm that's, I believe you said, 10 times larger. Is this something that can, I guess my question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy would this be to duplicate if you had significantly more interest after these first initial grids are completed?
With 1 being the easiest,
With
or 10
one
being the
being
easiest?
1 being the easiest and 10 being as difficult as possible.
1.
Wow.
So think of it in terms of the chair analogy. Okay. Once the first chair got made, how many more iterations of different types of cool chairs came out?
As many as there are people to sit in them, pretty much.
And to that end, think about the implications of being able to go off grid in general. I mean, we've got a housing crisis facing us as well, right? So what's preventing us from going and building a subdivision anywhere we want? The access to utilities. Once you have electricity at a particular site, you can make anything you want. Electricity is the sorcerer's stone. Never forget that. You can turn anything, you can make almost anything if you have electricity. You can make food, you can make water, you can turn salt water into clean water. Now you can make fuel out of water with hydrogen fuel. We're leaders in that space too. Wait till you guys see what we got cooking there. I mean, think about a future that's run on hydrogen fuel cells that are run on hydrogen fuel that's made at these farms with the excess energy that they've got. Maybe they've got land that's not being used for farming that we turn into, net excess generators of fuel made from water. The implications of being able to go off grid with renewables and to build these interdependent, fully sustainable systems it goes far beyond agriculture. Think about now being able to go to the marketplace and saying, look, see what we did with this farm? You think we can't do it with your office building? You think we can't do it with your stadium? And we're going to be doing stuff like that as well.
Wow. The potential is pretty much limitless from, just from those statements alone, and certainly the vision is there, and the personnel is there as well. What did you call your mentor, the Yoda of renewables earlier?
Yoda of renewables, yeah, Brian Kuhn.
The Yoda of renewables.
He's the OG, guys. He believed it until he saw it. And nothing is going to make me more happy than seeing him just smile at these things coming together, because he was doing this stuff before it was cool, right? Before there was any funding for it. He was a stalwart hero, and he took his lumps, and He's put his butt on the line more times than I can count to get us to where we are right now. And it's guys like that whose broad shoulders we stand on today to bring this whole thing forward into the future. I mean, look, energy independence is something that I heard about growing up, and frankly, it was a right side issue the whole time. It always has been. You know, I believe that energy independence is very important, and it can start right at home. It doesn't have to be something that we aspire to as a country. We can aspire to it as a country while we get busy doing it in our own backyard. That's what we can do now. And SIRC is fully integrated to be able to deliver on that promise. We're going to do it big to prove that it can be done big. And then we're going to reel it back to say, hey, who else wants this? And pretty soon, it's not going to take 50% of the ratepayers to want to have their own power plant on site for all the reasons. It's the 100th monkey theory. It's only going to probably take about 10% adoption rate for us to hit a tipping point. And then these conversations are going to be about us just being able to keep up with the orders.
Incredible. Looks like you just got a new nickname. Troy coined you Baby Yoda. All right. We're coming up on...
I'll
sorry,
take it.
go ahead. Oh, okay.
Grogu.
Welp, we're coming up on the home stretch of this wonderful, what I consider to be an incredible Q&A. Probably the largest single deposit of information in one sitting I've ever been a part of in media and investor relations. Is I can comment from my perspective that I have never seen anything this comprehensive from any of my dealings with any other companies. So kudos to you guys for coming in here and really giving shareholders just everything that they could possibly ask for and more, and then more on top of that as we get to our last couple questions. Is there any plan for a possible partnership with iRoofing to develop an SaaS, software as a service platform for residential solar?
I love the team at iRoofing. One of the three original founders of iRoofing, a gentleman named Shai Cohen, is one of my very best friends in the world. He exited when Porch acquired iRoofing last year. The two remaining partners who stayed on through the integration, Daniel and Oded, very dear friends of mine. There's been a lot of consolidation that went on in the service providers to leading the leading service providers to the roofing and contracting space over the last few years. iRoofing, Balance, Company Cam, Sales Rabbit, Job Nimbus. Many have been caught up in this, whether it's acquisition or large amounts of private equity or investment funding coming in. And so it's really been cool to see. iRoofing is some of the coolest software out there. If you're not familiar with iRoofing, go check them out. We recently did a bunch of media with Josh Gless, who's their vice president of business development and sales, also a dear friend of mine. Balance and iRoofing have been partners for going back to 2015. iRoofing was a founding member of the Catalyst Group with us. So these guys are like family friends to my wife and I. And all that being said, as personally close as I am with them, we do a lot with them. We do a lot of client sharing, a lot of events. We recently did a small event here in Indianapolis. Josh Gless is on a road tour right now. It's very popular for biz dev people in our industry to do. So as to any specifics on future SaaS platforms with them or other software partners of SIRC or Balance, that would be confidential. I can't disclose it. Safe it to say, as if this Q&A hasn't, pulled the veil back on it, we've got a lot going on. We have a lot of data at Balance. We have a lot of data at SIRC. And in the realm of big data and machine learning and partnerships, there's a lot going on. So don't think we're just going to use all of the capital that we get to buy other companies.
Amazing. Even more to look forward to. We touched on this a little bit earlier. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add. Maybe, there's a little bit more detail that you want to go into. What is your biggest project currently, and what kind of numbers are you projecting from this project?
I'm going to go ahead and let Joe answer that because it's basically a Mojave project currently.
I would say it's the project that the owners of the Mojave project are introducing us to.
Correct.
I mean, this just goes to show you that, one begets four in this industry. There's no way that I can disclose to you who that party is right now, but they're freaking huge.
And
Okay,
this
they
would be the
have
farm that's 10 times the size of the one that you're currently contracted with.
right. And remember when I said they buy all of the goods that the other farm can generate, and they have farming operations all over the world in 32 countries. So they're up to something, right? They've got a reason to be doing all this farming all over the place. They probably have a really, really big parent that needs it, that wants it, that needs it every year, every month, every week. And so when that kind of an operation comes knocking and says, hey, here's what we got going on. We've got 50,000 acres and we're only farming 2,500 acres. And I see that 4,000 acre project that you're doing over next door. My only concern about you doing the same thing for me is that it's too good to be true. Guys, that's, in my world, that's a yes, right? And so then we go and meet with their CFO, and they're already trusting of their farming advisor here in the US who sells them all their stuff, who's helping them get their farm up and running. And so when they see their farming advisor go in this direction to build out this infrastructure on site, to have their own on-site power grid, to be a leader in that space, and then for that group to say, hey, we want to partner with SIRC going forward to help you develop the agricultural side of these types of projects. And we're going to also originate the opportunities through our existing network of groups such as this here. This one's one of the biggest ones in the world. You start to take a step back and say, geez, just that business line is in and of itself is billions of dollars of sales, right? And maybe more. The biggest concern facing the world is food shortage over the coming years. There's other projects that we have going on that, are in the hundreds of millions individually and as portfolios. Let's not forget the small to mid cap commercial and industrial projects that are great projects, 500,000, $1 million, a couple $1 million. We've got already in development, over $50 million worth of those projects as well. And that's something that we're going to be expanding on quite a bit. We've only just begun to tap into the fish in a barrel, as I like to call it, which are the leads that are coming from Olive Balance's existing customers. They've opened us up already to, just a couple of them have opened us up already to quite a number of projects. There's one in particular that is going to get a lot of press in the coming weeks and months, I think. That just from one of those roofing companies that Balance works with, making one referral to one of their customers turns into probably a $30 million project for SIRC, and another marquee kind of show off type of opportunity that will probably yield quite a few more like it, similar to this agricultural thing that we're doing. It's hard not to be specific with you guys. I don't like to box around, but I can't disclose certain names. That's all.
No, perfectly understandable. Yeah, it's, when you're that excited, it's, always tough to bite your tongue. All right.
It's real.
So, Mr. Clymer, Mr. Rinehart, Mr. Loud, we are on our last question after 2 hours and 45 minutes or so of just some of the most incredible information you could ever hope to get from a company as a shareholder. So let's close this out. Can you please discuss any future upcoming projects and prospects that will foster long-term growth for shareholders?
Well, we just hit that really good. Every single project we look at is the first of many project opportunities, is the takeaway from this. I think as people go back and they unpack this Q&A session, they'll hear some of the themes and some of the nuggets that we've weaved through here on some information we just can't disclose yet. A lot of what we do is, still covered under, confidentiality agreements, things we haven't PR'd and such yet. But there's certain words or things that you'll hear over and over throughout this will be a trail of pebbles of things you'll see coming in the future on some long-term growth through some of these major project opportunities that we have. Brad?
Yeah, I would just like to thank our shareholders for their attention and the quality of the questions they're asking, and frankly, for their patience sometimes. But you know what time it is now? It's Miller time at Soggy Bottom, so I will meet you all there.
Troy said he's buying.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for a long and productive Q&A. Gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure, and I am quite certain that shareholders are thoroughly amazed and quite happy with the treasure trove of information that has been disseminated this evening. Gentlemen, as always, a pleasure to have you here.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Elijah. Thanks, MediaTek. Thank you to all of our fantastic shareholders. I know this was a marathon, and we're so grateful that you spent your evening listening and talking with us. Thank you.
All right. We are closing it off. Thank you very much. This is Elijah of MediaTek. Thank you to the shareholders. Gentlemen, good night.
Good night.